The ridiculous saga of Hurricane Helene response continues months later in North Carolina, though this time it isn't the feds messing up, it's the local government. I've had people sending me TikTok videos for a few weeks now with claims that victims and survivors are getting kicked out of their temporary housing, but I didn't have any proof or any official government statement, so I did not want to report on it. Until now. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel for another super awesome government fun time. I am going to get to the sponsor straight away so we can jump into this one because it's great. And that sponsor is Blackout Coffee and their Black Friday sale, so keep an eye out for 25% off the entire site starting 8 p.m. on Thursday. Blackout Coffee is your 2A friendly Florida-based coffee roaster built on traditional values, helping to protect your rights and keeping their customers awake, not woke. They have an amazing selection of coffees, teas, and hot chocolate, and even partner with some of your favorite channels, hopefully, and gun rights groups to help support the Second Amendment. And using code LibertyDoll gets you a one-time 20% discount on your purchase. So to help support the channel, go to blackoutcoffee.com/LibertyDoll. Going back to Western North Carolina, we know folks have been living in tents and carports and hotels and donated RVs. While it, for some reason, didn't hit the news, we also know from literally hundreds of people online that the Amish have been coming down from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, building tiny homes for folks to live in. We also have news reports of business owners of Ridgeline Heating and Cooling donating and building tiny homes for residents in Lake Lure. We know tiny homes were also donated by an organization called Cabins for Christ. I am sure there are even more than that. But it is the report on Cabins for Christ here that gives us the most relevant info. That will be very important. The report says that the nonprofit started working in the Swannanoa area after receiving a call from a school resource officer that dozens of students were without housing and were sleeping on the ground using tarps as sleeping bags. By the way, there were also rumors and accusations of the county and state coming in with DSS workers and taking these kids away. I have not been able to confirm that, so I'm not going to comment on it beyond telling you that that is a rumor that is going around and that there are people that are concerned about that. Now, some of the homes being provided are basically sheds with an outlet. No one is denying that, but they are better than a tent or a tarp. The ones from Cabins for Christ are 8x6 storage sheds with a bed, heat composting toilet, a window, and solar panels for LED lighting and phone charging. Online plans do also show a sink and a shower. Now, they are obviously not mansions at only 128 square feet, which is important for later, but they are better than a tent. They have some form of heating. They have some form of electricity. Apparently, they have figured out some kind of water system if there is a shower and sink area. They're better than nothing, especially now that the area is getting snow, especially seeing as the group originally tried to send campers but simply couldn't find any to send. Now, this was all great and uplifting news that all of these folks were stepping up and working together to try and get shelter for these people while the government, I don't know, didn't. We also heard of tiny homes being shipped to a campground in Buncombe County where 25 were built and the other 75 were waiting when the local government showed up and told them that they couldn't build them. Then we started getting videos from local residents saying that local governments were coming and kicking people out of the tiny homes because they weren't up to code, which honestly sounds about right for the government, but again, without anything but some social media videos, I was cautious. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now we have screenshots from the Mitchell County Government Facebook page, and their announcement reads, "Please remember that any temporary housing installations must comply with North Carolina's building and health codes." It provides a phone number to the county's inspections department. Then includes a statement from the Division Chief of Codes and Interpretations, David Rittlinger. Temporary shelters and dwellings that fail to meet the minimum requirements of the 2018 North Carolina State Building Code are inherently unsafe for occupancy. Temporary shelters and dwellings that fail to meet minimum code requirements are particularly vulnerable, especially if they lack proper structural anchoring, which can lead to instability, especially in adverse weather conditions. Additionally, the building may not comply with life safety and weather protection standards such as proper fire protection safety measures, sanitation, insulation, and waterproofing measures, which are crucial for safety and comfort. Moreover, unstable soil conditions, particularly in areas where flooding has occurred, need to be evaluated. Topsoil is likely saturated with water, which may contribute to a significant loss of structural load-bearing support for temporary shelter buildings and dwellings, increasing the risk of collapse or damage. So mud. They're saying that you can't build these temporary tiny homes because mud. Given these considerations, any temporary shelters and dwellings not meeting the minimum requirements of the 2018 North Carolina State Building Code should not be occupied, even if temporarily. Ensuring compliance with established codes is essential to protect occupants from potential hazards and to maintain the structural integrity of the building. I understand that temporary housing is crucial in the recovery from Hurricane Helene. However, safety cannot be compromised. Like permanent buildings and structures, proposed temporary shelters and dwellings and their locations shall be reviewed by the local code enforcement jurisdictions so that safe and functional temporary shelters and dwellings can be provided. So right there, they are saying that they will come out and inspect all of these little tiny homes and these sheds, and if they are not up to code and not permitted and following the state's specific instructions, then you cannot live there, and they will not allow those structures to be occupied. And the Mitchell County Inspections website has a notice right at the top reminding folks that they need permits and inspections for hurricane recovery. In other words, they might not have kicked people out yet, but they are warning you that they will. And this is purely coincidental. I just plugged into YouTube how to say Buncombe County to make sure I'm saying it right. I didn't even get that far, so I'm probably wrong. The first thing that pops up is from WLOS News saying over 1,000 children left homeless after Hurricane Helene. I don't know if you can see that on there, but it's from WLOS News, updated only an hour ago, and this is 1,000 children left without homes just in Buncombe County alone. Now, these folks just got running water almost 2 months after the storm. And this county was also accused of kicking people out of tiny homes. Government was mum about all of this until a live video that they actually put out this morning on Monday responding to the claims by saying, well, that's misinformation. Here's what really happened. You see, these were sheds and not tiny homes. So, arguing legal semantics. Check it out.
The person making this post falsely claims that the county will not allow tiny homes in Barnardsville. I say person loosely because this account was not created all that long ago, or was not created all that long ago. So here's what's actually happening. These were not tiny homes, but actually sheds like the one that I have in my backyard where I store my gardening supplies. North Carolina Building Code says that homes, even temporary ones, must have a bathroom, be anchored, and have a heat source that is not cord and plug connected. So a space heater is not an appropriate heat source in any of these temporary structures. Anyone can access and review these building codes at www.ncosfm.gov. Now that's the North Carolina Office of the State Fire Marshal, NCOSFM. That's where these regulations are, and we have to comply with those. So what this post claims about us not allowing tiny homes is 100% not factual, and we're not even certain that the person who posted this is a real person. Our county inspectors have not done any site inspections that have shut these things down. Now on November 19th, what is true, less than a week ago, Buncombe County Commissioners adopted changes to the zoning ordinance to allow for emergency housing in response to Tropical Storm Helene. So quick overview, but you'll also see this information in the chat. So it defines what is emergency housing. So emergency housing is a travel trailer, a manufactured home, building code compliant habitable structure, or other FEMA approved shelter. It is temporary. And it's also needed due to a declared federal, state, or local disaster. Of course, we are still under that local state of emergency. There is also a federal declaration in place.
So, again, they're not saying that they didn't kick people out. They're saying that these structures aren't allowed. They're telling people they're not allowed, telling people they can't build them, but apparently fell short of kicking people out simply because they haven't done the inspections yet. But they will be doing those inspections, and right here this government official is telling you that these temporary shelters are illegal and cannot be donated as housing. She also later says that to be considered temporary housing, it needs to be from an established nonprofit who is recognized as working with the government, and not to donate to any other organizations, because other organizations might be the ones building these, quote, garden sheds and trying to pass them off as shelter. Now this sounds a little bit familiar when we were told that FEMA wasn't messing with things, but also to only donate to organizations affiliated with FEMA. Pardon me for being skeptical. So then you might ask, what are the regulations around tiny homes in the state? And well, that gets even more complicated because they vary between different cities and counties, rural versus city, but all require an application and a permit. Of course. Some counties require the homes to be at least 120 square foot of habitable space with an additional 150 square feet per occupant, while others require the original 150 square feet with an additional 100 per occupant. All must be on a foundation or else have permanent wheels and an axle. If they don't have wheels and an axle, they need to have plumbing hooked up to a sewer. Either way, our 128 square foot cabins for Christ with compost toilet are automatically disqualified for plumbing and space. If they could somehow figure out how to rig this with plumbing and attach it to a sewer system that hasn't been working until about 2 weeks ago, it would still be disqualified for space unless it's for a single occupant, seeing as they were built for children who are homeless and have homeless parents. Well, sorry, no cabin for you, says the government. Now, there are special rules for temporary housing as well for homeless people, but these homes must be a minimum of 180 square feet and require monthly payments of over $350 to the state. Buncombe also says in their live that you can only have 2 of these travel trailer tiny homes per lot, and if you have more than that in any given area, well then it has to be managed by a special official agency, aka more red tape bullshit. Meanwhile, one volunteer with an organization called Emergency RV claims that they went to a government RV storage facility and petitioned the government to use some of those RVs that were just sitting there to donate to the area as temporary housing, and were told it was against regulation because the victims lived in a floodplain. Now, remember in that statement, they also said that you cannot put any of these tiny homes or temporary structures on mud or areas that are floodplains. Buncombe County also said that in their live that you cannot get a permit for any kind of tiny home in an area that has been flooded. These people are homeless because of floods. So are these officials saying that even if people put out a permit and have the proper plans, that they're not going to get approved because the area flooded? Because that's kind of what it sounded like in what we read and in that live video. Now, some groups like Operation Shelter have turned now to trying to provide residents with tents, because at least the tent shelters don't need to be inspected, and some of them can be outfitted with a wood-burning stove, apparently. So there we have it, folks. While I understand the government saying that, well, they need to do XYZ for safetiness, we have just another example of government getting in the way of communities helping communities, of saying that it is better for these children to be sleeping on the ground, in tarps, in the snow, in below freezing temperatures, than to be sleeping in a shed that isn't at least 150 square feet. I don't think I've heard a single more government-ish thing in my entire life. I am glad that I was able to bring this to you guys and finally find proof as to the rumors and things that I've been hearing in the videos that you folks have been sending me, but I wish that it wasn't true, and I wish that I didn't have to tell you. But there it is. So, you guys know the drill for all of the algorithm things. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you are new here, ring that notification bell, because I'm going to be keeping to uncover these things as long as they're going on. And as always, guys, thanks for tuning in. Please stay safe and warm out there, and happy shooting.